Right now, the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season is genuinely taking an unusual turn, but not the one most headlines are implying. And understanding the real turn is exactly what could keep you safer this year. As of early July, Colorado State University's tropical meteorology team slashed its seasonal forecast down to just 9 named storms and only 1 major hurricane, a dramatic cut from the 13 named storms and 2 major hurricanes the same team predicted back in April. If that lower number holds, this could become one of the quietest Atlantic hurricane seasons in more than a decade. But here is the part that genuinely matters for anyone living along the coast. A quieter season does not mean a safer one, because the storms that do manage to form this year are forming inside an ocean primed to make them explode in strength faster than almost any point in recorded history. Today, we are going to break down exactly why storm counts are dropping, while individual storm danger is rising, what is actually driving both trends at the same time, and what real preparation looks like heading into the peak of this season. No exaggeration, no doomsday guessing, just the data, the atmospheric science, and the real stakes. Drop a comment right now. Have you ever lived through a hurricane that intensified faster than anyone expected, or watched a forecast change dramatically in just a day? Tell me where you were. So many of you write in from the Gulf Coast, Florida, and across the Caribbean, and I read every single one of those comments. If you want to know the moment this season's outlook changes again, subscribe right now. It costs nothing. And a thumbs up tells the algorithm to put this in front of the people who genuinely need to see it. Let us get into it. NOAA released its official 2026 Atlantic hurricane outlook back on May 21st, predicting a below normal season with 8 to 14 total named storms, 3 to 6 hurricanes, and 1 to 3 major hurricanes, giving a 55% chance the season lands below normal overall. The reason behind that below normal call has a specific name, a strengthening El Niño, a natural warming pattern in the tropical Pacific Ocean that reliably suppresses Atlantic hurricane activity through a well-understood mechanism, increased wind shear. Wind shear is the change in wind speed and direction at different altitudes above the ocean surface, and strong shear essentially tears a developing tropical storm apart before it can organize into anything dangerous, tilting its structure and disrupting the thunderstorm clusters. A hurricane needs to build a stable core. As El Niño strengthened through June and into July, that suppressing effect showed up immediately in the data. Wind shear over the Caribbean Sea reached the second highest level ever recorded for early July. Hostile conditions that have kept this year's storm count running well below the pace of recent, more active seasons. This is exactly why Colorado State University's July update cut their forecast so sharply, from 13 named storms and 2 major hurricanes back in April down to just 9 named storms and 1 major hurricane by July. A reduction of 5 fewer storms and 3 fewer hurricanes than what an average season typically produces. If that number holds through November, it would represent the fewest Atlantic storms in any season since 2014. So far this year, activity has tracked with that quieter pattern, with only a couple of named storms forming by early July, compared to a historical average of roughly 1 storm by this point in a typical season. And CSU forecasters have been direct in their messaging, even while predicting a quiet year overall, reminding coastal residents that it only takes 1 hurricane making landfall to make a season active for the people it actually hits. Now here is where this story genuinely takes its dangerous turn, and it has nothing to do with how many storms form this year. Even in a below normal season suppressed by El Niño's wind shear, the underlying ocean heat content across the Atlantic basin remains a completely separate variable, and that heat has not gone anywhere. Climate researchers have spent the past 2 decades documenting a clear, measurable shift in how tropical storms behave once they do manage to form, a process called rapid intensification, defined as an increase in a storm's maximum sustained winds of at least 35 miles per hour within 24 hours or less, with an even more extreme category defined at 58 miles per hour or more in that same single-day window. According to Climate Central's tracking of storm data from 1980 through 2025, 190 Atlantic tropical cyclones experienced rapid intensification over that period, and nearly a quarter of those storms, 46 separate systems, intensified at the extreme rate. The trend gets more concerning the more recent the data becomes. Comparing the 20 years from 2004 through 2023 against the 20 years before that, researchers found 93 storms rapidly intensified in the more recent period, compared to 69 in the earlier one. And extreme rapid intensification events specifically nearly doubled, 27 cases from 2003 through 2023, compared to just 12 in the 20 years before that. This is not a subtle statistical drift. It is a measurable doubling of the most dangerous category of hurricane behavior within a single generation. The physical mechanism behind this shift is well understood and directly tied to ocean temperature. Rapid intensification requires very warm water, low vertical wind shear directly beneath and around the storm's core, and high levels of mid-level atmospheric moisture. And since April of 2023, global sea surface temperatures have remained continuously hotter than any period on record by a wide margin, providing exactly the fuel source rapid intensification depends on regardless of what the broader seasonal wind shear pattern looks like across the wider basin. Recent seasons illustrate just how routine this has become even in years that were not considered historically active overall. In 2025, 4 separate hurricanes, Erin, Gabrielle, Humberto, and Melissa, all rapidly intensified, with Hurricane Erin's winds surging by 85 miles per hour in just over 24 hours on its way to becoming that season's first Category 5 storm, and Hurricane Melissa climbing from a fresh tropical storm to a full Category 5 hurricane in less than 48 hours, before striking Jamaica as one of the strongest storms to directly hit the island in recent history. A 2022 study by CSU meteorologist Phil Klotzbach found that out of every major Category 3 or higher hurricane recorded between 1990 and 2022, 88% had undergone rapid intensification at some point in their life cycle, meaning the overwhelming majority of the storms that actually cause catastrophic damage share this exact behavior as a defining characteristic, not an occasional exception. This is precisely why a below-normal storm count season can still produce a genuinely dangerous, even historic, individual hurricane. Fewer storms forming does not mean the ones that do form are behaving more mildly. It means there are simply fewer opportunities for one of them to catch a favorable pocket of warm water and explode in strength with very little warning. Forecasters explicitly warn that rapid intensification remains one of the hardest phenomena in all of meteorology to predict precisely, which directly contributes to the outsized human and economic toll these specific storms cause, since a hurricane that looks moderate on a Tuesday forecast map can be a catastrophic major hurricane by Wednesday night, leaving coastal communities with dramatically less time to evacuate or prepare than a storm that strengthens gradually over several days. NOAA's own outlook acknowledged this reality directly, noting that even though the overall seasonal numbers point toward a quieter year, coastal residents should prepare for every hurricane season regardless of the seasonal forecast, precisely because a single landfalling storm determines how active the season feels for the specific community it strikes, independent of how many total storms formed across the wider Atlantic basin that year. NOAA's seasonal outlook is scheduled for an official update in early August, timed specifically ahead of the historical peak of hurricane season, which typically runs from mid-September through October, meaning the numbers driving today's below normal expectation could still shift as peak season conditions develop and as El Niño's exact strength through the fall becomes clearer. If you live anywhere along the Gulf Coast, the Atlantic seaboard, or across the Caribbean, here is what actually matters heading into peak season, regardless of how many total storms this year ultimately produces. Have your evacuation plan and route decided before a storm is bearing down on your specific area, not while it is already approaching? Since rapid intensification can compress your decision-making window to a fraction of what a traditionally slow, strengthening storm would allow. Keep a genuine emergency kit ready with water, food, medication, and important documents for at least 72 hours. And know that NOAA's flood inundation mapping service now covers 60% of the United States population, with plans to expand to nearly full coverage by late September, giving emergency managers far more precise visualizations of exactly which streets and neighborhoods are likely to flood during a given storm. Pay attention to storm forecasts even when a system looks unremarkable on day one, since the data is unambiguous that a meaningful share of the most dangerous hurricanes in recent history looked entirely ordinary less than 48 hours before making landfall as a major hurricane. And never assume a below normal seasonal forecast means your specific community is safe this year, since that forecast describes the entire Atlantic basin's total activity, not the specific risk facing any one coastline the moment a storm actually forms nearby. Final thought. The real story of the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season is not simply more storms or fewer storms. It is two powerful, opposing forces operating on the same ocean at the same time. A strengthening El Niño actively suppressing how many storms managed to form in the first place, layered directly on top of record-breaking ocean heat that is making every storm which does survive that hostile environment dramatically more capable of exploding into a major hurricane with very little warning. That combination is exactly what forecasters mean when they describe the season as having taken a dangerous turn, not a louder season, but a sharper one, where the margin for error on any single storm has never been thinner. We will keep tracking every NOAA update, every CSU forecast revision, and every storm that forms as this season heads toward its peak. Subscribe so you do not miss it, and leave that comment below as a hurricane ever intensified faster than you expected, right before it reached your area. Because for millions of people living along these coastlines, this is not an abstract seasonal statistic, it is the reality they prepare for every single year. Let us get this one to 5,000 likes. See you in the next one.